Hi, I'm Dana Yao, your host on the Emerging Markets Tech Startups podcast. While traveling to over 90 countries, I was inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit across startup communities in Africa, Latin America, Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. On the show, we bring you stories from entrepreneurs, startup ecosystem innovators, and investors. We discuss what makes these markets culturally and historically unique, local trends, local challenges consumers and founders face, and the opportunities. Let's get started. I'm so excited today. We have Neda here, who's the VP of Product at DigiKala, and her and I met 2016 when I went to visit Iran. I have the great fortune to get to connect with her again. So Neda, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Diana. It's also I'm excited to meet you again. I started in Iran as a founder in 2011 when I came back from my studies. Like 2.5 years after that, I joined the very first venture capital, which was forming in Iran. When at the same time, startup ecosystem was shaping and getting growing, which I have worked with them for around 6 years. At those time, I was mentoring different startups. Also, as a mentor, worked with an accelerator, which was also founded by the same venture capital. And around 3 years ago, I joined one of the startups that I also was invested by the same venture capital, DigiKala, which is actually currently the largest marketplace in Iran, owning more than 80% of the market nowadays in the e-commerce. Since there, I actually have been working in the product team as a VP of product.
Tell us a little bit about the founding of DigiKala with the two brothers.
They were trying to buy a camera, and so they are one of them is actually a professional photographer, and so he wanted to know exactly what each of these cameras actually can give him, and he was searching for a content that actually give him like which ones he actually need to buy. And unfortunately, when he was searching, he was not getting enough of data, especially in Farsi speaking. And also when he was going from one shop to the other shop, like the shoppers, one of them was more of saying that, take this one, the other shopper was saying, take that one, and so on. So he came to say, okay, how come we don't have a place that I can actually read the reviews and really can trust the reviews and actually then buy it also from them online. So I don't need to go from this shop to the other shop, and I cannot trust any of them. So actually that was the main idea that formed the DigiKala. So they actually brought up an e-commerce which is much relying on its reviews. Like it's still like in DigiKala, what actually we know as our competitive advantage is also the amount of reviews, and which is much even now bigger and grown by the UGCs, like user generated contents, that people can more rely on than trust than only one person or the shopper or the actually the seller actually is putting in there. So that is where actually DigiKala started, and it have been growing since. Like they started with digitals and then get into the electronics, and it was exactly at the time that they got the first funding from Sarva actually. And I also have been close to them, that they entered into like lifestyles, and then they grow the categories into fashion. And even it was only 2 years ago that we also entered into fresh markets, into supermarkets and FMCGs, which was also totally interesting and have been still interesting in this market. So actually we now call ourselves like the marketplace, and because around 5 years ago also DigiKala switch into becoming a marketplace than an e-retailer, and since then have been growing its marketplace platform, and to bring sellers from different parts of the country, like even in small cities or even villages who are actually producing stuff, to be able to offer the products online, and for shoppers from all around the country, even in the hardest part that is not really reachable, or they may not have access to any of the variety of the products. They actually can buy things online.
All right, so let's talk about Iran. A lot of our listeners are in the US. We hear different things in the media, and me visiting there is kind of stark differences. So you educate us on the market. How big is the population there? What are things that are unique to the market?
The best thing, like the thing that is actually making Iran really interesting for the not only the founders but also investors and even the different ventures who want to actually enter is actually the young population in here. 88 million of population, which are all consumer markets for any kind of ideas that comes in, with more than like we can count around like 72 million online users who are actually buying online, which for a business as like of an e-commerce or a marketplace or any online business is actually a very interesting thing. So we usually count like every person have around like 2 mobile phones at their hand. But at the same time, you can see a lot of shoppers from different online stores to also Instagram and Telegram like shops are even huge in here. Because people are really looking forward to buy things online, and we really need to see how we can grow the infrastructure in here for all these online users that can be a part of the consumer, can be part of the target markets for any online businesses.
I remember being there and you guys were educating me that Instagram was already really big there. And in 2016, I was like, well, I'm not even using Instagram, and you guys were all over it. So definitely a population that is very tech forward, very fashion forward, I remember. What are things that we should know about the culture that drives people's purchasing? Like, what are things you learned within DigiKala about how people buy in
We
Iran?
really find out the although the consumer market is either from like very young population, I can say from what we see also in DigiKala and our data, like we are seeing that most of these people are from 25 to 45 years old, and which is actually the ones who are actually working and have the money to spend also online. The population is also quite price sensitive, which like they also are looking for different options, especially on the prices. That actually makes for us actually in DigiKala looking into the prices and being price like competitive in the market. That's one thing that we like people only consider like the deliveries and also the logistics platform. So it's also something that we can see it is getting much better and growing. Though like for a size of a DigiKala, we actually are putting all our investment into our logistics, because this is where we see that we need to invest to be able to also expand. And we also have seen in the last few years that all the logistics like related or the operation related also startups getting in there like Snap and so on, and have been growing since, because we can see that it have been a fundamental needs in there that have been also growing at the same time.
I remember visiting, I think I was speaking to your guys' CTO. I was like, oh, what exciting things are you guys working on? And he told me you guys were testing drones for last mile delivery. Did that ever happen?
Yeah, actually we tested that one, but actually, unfortunately, that didn't happen. And that's also something about the market, because what I actually see still a big hole in here, or still a big gap in here, is also the investment, or also the interest into the hardware related ideas, or hardware related like platforms, which are like from not only from the drones, but even like while we also have a big operation, so in robotics, in different things that we actually need in the hardware, we are really seeing still small steps taken in there, that I believe is still like a gap in here, that for any startups or for any ideas or any like investments to be done in here, it's actually needed to be taken off. So we did tested the drones, but it was more of a test.
Surprising. I remember hearing a ton of I don't know if it was electrical engineer or computer engineer in Stanford, where like many of them were Iranians. Personally, a coworker I had, her name was also Neda. She came from Stanford, and I think she graduated from Sharif. Is that the university in Tehran that's known for the engineering? So I'm surprised that robotics isn't a huge thing in the local ecosystem yet.
If you either go to electric, mechanic, and then also computer, are actually a talented student. And still is actually the highest number of graduates are actually from these subjects. But the thing is that what I see is the needs of investment, especially in the hardware, because it's much more needed into the money and funding, rather than the softwares, which like with small investments actually can grow and scale. That's I think is one of the main factors for actually it's still in the hardware side. We are actually, like I can say, we are behind what we need and what we actually require, actually, as our software platforms have been growing these days.
What are 3 local problems, challenges that startups can be solving in in Iran? Traffic, I know, being one of them. And smog.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's actually interesting because even in the last year, if I look, two things that happened that actually show a huge, where actually like should be the focus, or where actually is still the huge gap. So one of them is the recent pandemic that the whole world is actually caught up with. So when now we look at it, really we still see like a lot of gaps still needed in e-learning platforms, like schools became like, okay, what we should do now, okay, like how we should like bring all the students in here. And so still I think it's one of them is e-learning, the other is actually healthcare, because I see, not even like when I look at the startup scenes and all the startups which are there working, is a lot of like things that is good things that have been done, like I can say inside of commerce, logistics, and so on. But still, like, and healthcare e-learnings is actually, we still have a lot of gaps. And the other thing, like when you mentioned also traffic, is it's not, I won't say only traffic, but totally in the side of environmental like ideas or something, back to even agricultures. Like Iran is known for also its agriculture, but when you look at the ideas in there, it's like very few, like there's still like a lot of things that can be done in there that I see a gap. And the other thing that actually also showed us that still there is a lot of opportunity in here. And even from that time, I have like, even it's not much time passed, but I can see like a lot of startups getting a bit of more power, is when actually we had the internet cut around last year. So the internet became internet inside. And it was that time that people realized, okay, when I want to come from my place to your place, I don't know how, because I don't have any map. So even those, like, basic things, we were like, okay, we really need to have also at least a few good solutions, internal solutions that at these times actually is working. And even like, it was funny, but it was like search was like, didn't exist anymore. And like people was like, what when I open my laptop, what I should do. Field in there, like from that time I have seen like 3 or 4 startups really investing and have been very successful inside of the map especially. And I believe these are like, beside of what I was talking about robotics, hardware, and so on, are actually where is still very good opportunities.
What was the maps startups you were talking about?
One of them actually was founded by the Cafe Bazaar, which actually is also owning the Amber marketplace. It was called Balad. Before that, I was using Waze. Like Waze is so known in here, like everybody knows like the guiding, but now it's actually Neshan.
But why? Was Waze not good enough?
The thing is that, so we had the internet cut off, and then it's also the filtering, which made the Waze no more accessible. Like right now, you really need to have your VPN on, and then if it works or it doesn't work. So people are actually more shifting now into all this local idea, local startup, which the service is actually getting much, much better, and people are getting more trusting them and more reliable on the services that they are giving. And that is really good thing that I see is actually happening for all these startups, and see the businesses are growing. They understand the needs of the market. They understand the requirements.
And I remember that was what was so exciting to me. Same thing with China, right? The country didn't let these international players in. Same thing with Iran. And because of that, you guys are forced to build great products. And because of that, you guys have gone so good at it that your own tech ecosystem, a lot of the products are localized. You're not able to depend on Google Maps, and even products like Facebook, I remember, and even the Google Play Store. So you had to develop your guys' own app store, Cafe Bazaar, which you just mentioned. Because of that, I was also inspired. That time we were sitting down with Cheyenne at A Network, he talked about the grit of entrepreneurs in Iran because there's so much they have to circumvent. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what are some of these stories either DigiKala had to do to still help users participate, but came across walls?
Like, one of the things that you need to work day-to-day basis is actually the innovations or the solutions that you need to come up, because of either it's like you get into the problem of like maybe censorship, filterings, or anything that is also a new something legally is not in there, or something legally bans you to do that, or so on. If you look at the fintech in Iran, I can say is much, much different from fintechs of like maybe and any other markets. I can say maybe in other, as you have been working like talking with Oslo or emerging markets, and you have seen different countries in the emerging market, it can be you have may seen, but the thing is that for us, especially in the banking system, and doing any ideas on innovation in the fintech, like you really need to know, okay, I have only the very, very small things that I can work with and innovate in that, because the rest is actually owned by the central banking, which has its own regulation. And for everything, you need to get a license, you need to get a, although I can say in the last few years, like I can say in the last 2 years at least, like all the bankings also understood that the need of the market cannot be answered by the regulation they have, and also not being innovative in there, that you can see actually banks are getting into this part of the market and doing things in the in fintech totally. Even like for other businesses, like when you're doing stuff, you need to know that there will be the times that something about the regulations may be pausing you, and you always need to innovate. Okay, how with this I need now to tackle this. Like even for size of a DigiKala, we actually come a lot with the problem of okay, something comes from a regulation, a new regulation comes in from your customers' KYCs, or something about the frauds, or something about the payments and so on, that the government puts a regulation on, and you need to know, okay, this may be different from any experiences that anybody in other like countries may have. So you need to innovate based on that one. That's something that you learn when you do the when you work in here, when you actually tackle, you are working on an idea, and you really need to know you have an openness to all of these that comes to you. Otherwise, you will be like, okay, I don't want to go anymore.
It's so frustrating, but at the same time, it's making you guys so much more like hack mentality. And I remember speaking to Shai, and he had mentioned someone was trying to buy Facebook ads, and obviously there was a sanction. And then they tried to like advertise through Europe and send money there, and found like other hacks. I was like, that must be just so tiring, because he was saying, oh, when we get caught, then we have to figure something out. And there's always this uncertainty when this new regulation is going to be landed onto you guys. So you guys are used to it now, but it still must be so frustrating. But at the same time, making these founders so resilient, which is what's needed in entrepreneurship, right? Being resilient, because you're always going to be thrown curved. All right, so let's talk about the rest of the startups in this ecosystem. So what are maybe the top 3 to 5 local startups that have been really successful?
We talked already about DigiKala. So the other one which I mentioned also, it was Snap. Like for me, like not Snap is actually main focus was on e-hailing, and then they have been using the same logistics they have to expand also in different markets, from food deliveries to supermarket deliveries, and also they have been like expanding into new ideas as well. Through the country, they have been growing the service, and it was interesting because for me, who have been like in the startup scene for long, and I remember the first time somebody was talking about, let's do an online taxi, and everybody was looking at them, what? Like people are using shared taxi in here. Who want to get like an online taxi? Like, what is this idea about? So, but when you're now like everybody like from very short distance, they want to go, okay, let me get a Snap. And then I like, this is how the behavior have changed.
The same thing happened when Uber came out, but if anything, Snap is needed more in Tehran than any other place, right? Because of the traffic, so people don't want to, and the parking. I remember how hard it was to find a parking spot in the city. I think it really has changed the transportation game there, so it's been a big help.
Yeah, and actually, it also may help build the like I would say the whole logistics, so which is needed for other businesses also. So if you're a business and then you like for another small shops, and then you do an e-commerce and you want to send up something from your shop to the customer, they actually can also use the not only Snap services, but in this side, the other startup that I was saying is also, which is a bit tough, I would say. For Iran, like this is something that we used to have, or also like motorbikes. So doing this like something like Uber bikes, but it's also AlloPay. So they actually are delivering for other startups, not only from as a person you can actually order in there, but also as a startup you can use their services and deliver. And the other one, actually, Cafe Bazaar as a whole have been growing because there have been entities that we don't have access to the like other markets like Google Play or other Play stores have been growing. But one of the startups they actually founded and have been growing is also Divar, which is an online classified in all different sectors, and they have been specializing in different lines. And it's really interesting how they got the market and have been growing. One other one that is also very, I really like them and have been like following them there since is actually the one who is invested in the infrastructure as of cloud, like doing the online cloud, named Abrarvan. They have been like growing by bringing also the infrastructure open for this other startups too. So you don't need as a startup to know, okay, how I can pay for my like all the servers and all the infrastructure that I need. So I go as pay you go, and then they have been able to getting a good traction in the market, especially for the startups that want to start and they don't want to get into the hassle of like all the infrastructure things. And the other one, which is much more new, especially I can see it even in the time of the pandemic, we have been seeing these needs in the market that even for your grocery shopping, you really don't, it's much safer if you don't go outside, and if it can get delivered to your home, especially if you're also infected. So you also really need these such services. So one of them that I have seen them started very small, but they have been growing is Pinkett. So they actually have the same idea of like Instacart. So they have shoppers in the different like areas, and then they do the shopping for you and put it in a motorbike, and you get them delivered at your home. And they started very small, but I can see them, they are getting a good traction, and it have been really helpful for at this time, especially for many households for using their service.
I remember going there, visiting, and all the services that we have here in the US had their own local Iranian version that that got me really excited. I remember there was another food startup that was funded by the Rocket Internet.
They renamed it to Snap Food, and like it's still also in the Snap group in total. And so they started with the restaurants, and they actually are quite big. I also consider them also part of the Snap group. So they don't only do with the restaurants or cafes or even the bakeries. They also do supermarkets and even local shops, like for example from drugstores and so on, which you can actually get your shop them online and get them delivered at your doorstep.
Are there any startups that are doing something really specific to Iran's challenges?
But one of them that I can say, like it's quite bigger in the market of Iran, is all these online motorbikes. Because when you go out, like nowadays when I go outside, there are more motorbikes in the streets rather than the cars. And I know they're always delivering something. And or there's people also doing not taxi, but sitting beside a motor, and then like it's much faster in the traffic of Tehran. It's like, especially when you're late, for me, it's also, I have been using it since, because it's a little bit weird for a woman being in the back of a motorbike of an unknown guy. So, but when I'm always late, I actually try the service, and though it is a little bit of regulated for women to get on a motorbike, but with breaking the law. So it's actually because of the traffic thing, it have been really helping it. Like I remember even in our, like one of the accelerators that we were working with in Sarawak was one of these medical startups that have been working on a sensor for understanding the heart attacks and so on, and they have been also expanding their market into global because they were also innovating on that part. And I know like there are small startups that they don't look only for the market of Iran, but actually they are looking more at the market of the global for all these ideas which they have been working on.
Any examples of localization in DigiKala? That, like you mentioned reviews, but I guess we do reviews too, but maybe not in the same intensive level. But are there other examples of localized
So we actually
within DigiKala?
like price is something really important in the market, as the people are more of the price sensitive. So we have been working on only a product only for our like not only controlling the prices, but also understanding what should be a market price and how we can control it, because we are working with a huge number of sellers in there, and how we can actually give them insights and give them all the controls over the pricing, which when I was like looking at the different benchmarks, I actually didn't find really that much regulated marketplace anywhere. But that is something that we found out, okay, this is something where we really need, and we really need to have to come up with that one. And then the other things actually, when it goes back to some of the things that we, because of the regulations, we actually need to do in terms of, especially for our solar suppliers, to do the KYCs on them, which is also not really something that other places really need to do that, but it's actually something that we need to find out, okay, how we don't make it hard for them to get in there, but also very make it an experience that they actually easily can go over. And then the other things go over, like all the things that we have done in our logistics because of not availability of our logistic platform, for example, for the post and so on, is something that really need to work on them, because we say, okay, there's no logistics in small cities. We really need to come up with our own logistics platform and building the infrastructure and the products and the automation we need around them.
I guess quick question. Are you guys using the maps company to direct the deliveries? Or did you guys build your own? Because I remember talking to Snap at that time, and they're like, we have to build our own maps because we can't depend on Google Maps.
Yeah, exactly. These are all the things that we actually are using more of something that, because any of the regulation comes in, we really need to be able to tackle them. Is also before the maps, we actually are using more of localized services, which is one of the local startups actually have been growing on the maps, because for all these, even like for the clustering thing in our logistics platform, to understand how we can deliver faster and more optimized, we are actually also using a localized idea from a startup that we invested in them. And even and the other thing, which was also very a bit of based on, because it happens, the market situations have a lot of effect on them, was actually supply and demand forecasting, which we really, for example, for a business at the size of DigiKala, we really need to have one. And then you always have these economic situations, the exchange rate, daily basis changing, and which totally affects on the supply and demand, which you cannot rely on any of the platforms or any other international startups in there. So actually, these are the things that we invest also in DigiKala on small teams in DigiKala Next. That they actually work on these ideas based on machine learnings, or even some of them based on the hardware that we need.
Intense. So many challenges presenting is more work for local problems to deal with, I guess, the currency fluctuation. At your time at Sarava, helping a bunch of founders, what were maybe 2 key challenges?
If I could say one of them is the talent. Although we have a good number of graduates from very good top universities, but unfortunately it's much easier for these talents to go outside of the country, and not only to do the study but also to find jobs. So really finding good talents still is also a very hard challenge, because even people who would start working with you, they leave very shortly after a while, and you always need to make sure how to acquire and retain your talents. And for a size, even of a startup, which it grows and have much more relying on these talents, is actually very hard time to find the talents. The other thing is actually, if I say, is also access to the global market, because of again about the regulations and everything, that it affects in 2 ways. One of them is actually understanding the global market and being ready for the global market, and able also to acquire for your service or for your offerings on the global market, is actually give you an insight that is totally different from if you work locally. Okay, even the numbers you see, or even the challenges that you see is much different. That I see so many of the startups, because they are not open to these global markets and see the challenges, see the numbers, see the opportunity in them. They become more of locals, which is on side good thing, but at the other time you need also to be ready to understand them and also learn a lot from them. And the other thing is also then access to the fundings, because for the startups to actually understanding, okay, how, when they need the funding and how they can access the funding, is even in these times even getting a little bit harder. And so they be able to know how much sooner they need to start searching for the fundings.
And what's the VC ecosystem like? I'm asking you since you worked in that part. Like, is there a lot of capital flowing around?
When I look back, especially from the years of 2013, 2014 till nowadays, is a lot of things change in the scene of the VCs also. Like it was exactly around that time that even SAR was started, and at that time there was not so much people were hearing or knowing about like VCs, or they can actually get funding from a VC. There was more of like bank loans and so on. But with like as we move forward, we actually see more of private sector, especially getting into like um, becoming actually interested in the venture capitals, not only as venture capitals, but sometimes also angel investors. And we see a rise of like accelerators actually in the years of, like I can say 2016, 2017, even 2018, that we had actually some people were actually saying that the number of accelerators are actually getting larger than the number of actually the startups. Startups have a lot of like people coming to them, and it was really a good time, especially in the 2018 for the startups, because there were much of because exactly it was that time that even government got a lot of interested into the startup scene, and they actually started investing in it, which was a really good thing. Actually, it's actually brought that, okay, these are actually the future. Because after like from like 2019 and so on, which a little bit of doing the international trade become a little bit harder and so on, we can see actually like not much of more international investors anymore in the market, but more of local investors or even angel investors and VCs, and have been working on the startups. And I believe for a startup nowadays, to find investors, it's still much easier than when I would think about the year of 2011 and so on, at that time I was actually having my own startup and was saying, okay, how I can find an investor in here and so on, because still like people are more educated on venture capitals, on investing, on even being an angel investors, mentoring the startups, and there's much more knowledge and insights which have been growing through the years.
And were there any major milestones in the last couple of years that have really kicked the momentum of startups to grow?
People understanding that these are not only a website coming up, or this is not something that as like hobby people are working on it, but it's something that later are actually becoming the very scaled businesses, was around 2010 to 2014, when it was rise of all these startups that was shaping. And it was around like at the same time, like from 2012, 2013 till like even when I was talking about 2018, that then at the same time, the venture capitals, angel investors, the capitals itself, and also like private investor actually came in. And it was around like 2016 moving to now, even when the government also got into this scene and have been investing or actually helping also the venture capitals or accelerators and so on to be able to invest on these startups and growing the scene. And meanwhile, you can see also the number of startups have been growing, and because there have been more of access even to co-working spaces, to mentors, events, like other like like founders who they can be talking with, like all the things that you really need in this startup scene.
So the ecosystem itself is driving more momentum, which is driving more people to start startups. And as there's greater quality startups, a lot of VCs are interested in seeing returns.
The ones that who have been a startup, who have been like getting these fundings in the beginning years of these venture capitals coming in, are now actually becoming the source of funding and also the venture capitals or investors into smaller startups. Like examples are DigiKala, Snap, Coffee Bazaar, like all of these, like in the years of like 2013, 2014, they also for themselves have been the startups, but now they have been grown to the size that they are now investing back into the startup scene, which is you can see now we are getting a bit more mature, although we are still have a lot of other steps to move forward. But we can see that this ecosystem is actually feeding itself and is growing actually, and it's really interesting.
And that's the really exciting part. I always point to The PayPal mafia had so much impact early on in the startup ecosystem. You see the same thing with Mercado Libre in Latin America, which also got really big. They basically did the same thing. Once they got really rich, they decided to invest heavily in the ecosystem, not just monetarily, but mentorship-wise. Because they were successful founders, they had to teach the next wave of founders the pains that they went through, the mistakes to avoid. So I'm really excited to see DigiKala leading the front and how people like yourself, if you decide to stay in DigiKala forever or after, go continue to help more startup founders to sort of pave the way for the next set of DigiKala type companies.
Like for me, myself, especially when I'm now in DigiKala, I can actually know also find out actually there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of needs and requirements actually from the market that you understand that even now in DigiKala, because we also started this foundation of DigiKala Next, which is type of an accelerator around 2 years ago, which we make them to focus more on the future problems that we're going to face. And there are small teams that forming in them, and then we do the fundings for them to grow and start to using their services time by time. And the other thing is that we also understand to be agile in this market, especially as the market is growing, the online market is growing, people are understanding that they can do businesses online. You also need to be fast to also be catching up with the competition and so on. So it is also same for other bigger startups at the scale, like for example, Snap, Other, and so on, that we understand that one part of closing this gap is also you need to either invest or hire or acquire or actually acquire other startups and while at the same time help them to grow, also help your own ecosystem inside, like for example, for DigiKala as a marketplace to be able to grow and capture the bigger market share.
I've had a great conversation just bringing excitement in the Iranian startup ecosystem as it gears itself up for rampant momentum. For people that are interested in Iran and the startup ecosystem there, how can they help?
One thing that I really think still can be a good source is still like knowledge and education sharings. And the other thing is that for any because we have seen also other founders or investors who are interested in Iran, I really like them to also get to know the Iranian market and the really all these opportunities still, I would say, underground that can like grow. And one other thing is also like because we have seen a great talent source from Iran that I'm sure like is the ones that actually you can actually trust, even when they are working inside the country for building an entity. They actually also think about Iranian market as building a team in here, which is also because it's at the same time, although it can be a cheaper resource, but they actually can get a very qualified talents that have been very good educated in here, and they can work in, especially for their expansions or even the expansion into the East markets actually is one of the other things they can look at. And for the future, when we have more stable situations and also hoping the doors getting open for sure, what is really needed in the market is still a lot of investments and fundings that can be done with the same local talents to grow this ecosystem in here.
Amazing. And we all just have to wait till November 3rd to see what happens. So thank you so much for making time, Neda. We really enjoyed hearing about this ecosystem that not many people are lucky, and I was lucky to meet you and some of the other people like Shayan and the CEO of Snap. So thanks for sharing with the rest of the world, and we've given them a taste of how powerful the ecosystem will be. Thanks for joining us today on the Emerging Markets Tech Startup Show. If you have questions, comments, requests for me to cover an emerging market, or want to be connected with today's guest, leave me a comment in the reviews or find me on Twitter @DianaYao. Until next time,